What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tomatolito Boxing Show, and let's keep on going with what a great weekend we had, and and there's many fights to talk about, and we're gonna dive into two more fights that took place this past Saturday in Las Vegas on the undercard of Benavides and Andrade. The first one that I want to touch base on is a Puerto Rican fighter, Subriel Matias, who is the champion one of the champions at 140 pounds, and he is putting on an amazing body of work, an amazing resume, and he's quickly becoming the boogeyman of 140. If you notice, his name doesn't get mentioned. His name rarely gets mentioned by anybody wanting to challenge, and you got the talk of the big names, right? And the big names talking, like Delfimo and Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia, of course, coming up. He's going to be fighting Oscar Duarte here in a few days. But these names continue to call each other. Devin Haney's going to be moving up against Regis Prograis, and you continue to have the similar names and the similar the attractive ones, maybe because of the money and the notoriety. But the title that nobody wants to go after, even Rolly Romero, who's actually a champion at 140 pounds after that victory he had with Ismael Barroso. Even Rolly gets called out because a lot of people deem that that's the easier route to take as the easier champion. And you hear Ryan Garcia mention his name, Devin Haney calling out Gervonta, and you got those same names: Shakur, Devin, Teofimo, Ryan Garcia, Tank. Other than that, I mean, Subriel Matias is one of the solid champions, in my opinion, right now. Scary. Somewhat of a boogeyman, not self-proclaimed, somewhat of a boogeyman right now because of his punching power. Now, he was on the undercard. He ended up fighting Ergashev. And I have trouble Shojahan, I think is how you pronounce his first name, but Ergashev being his last name. This is the fifth stoppage that Subriel Matias has in a row, and that's dating back to his unanimous decision loss against Petros Ananian. If you remember that loss that he suffered at the hands of Ananian, tight fight. It was a unanimous decision, a 10-round fight, and then 2 fights later, Matias ends up fighting Hawkins following Ananian's loss, or the loss to Ananian. He ends up fighting Jukembayev, which is an amazing fight, and that was a back and forth, just slugfest, bloodfest. If you have a chance, go back and watch that fight, Jukembayev and Matias. Amazing fight where Matias ends up stopping Jukembayev in the 8th round, and then he fights the revenge fight against Petros Ananian. So he had 2 fights between that loss with Hawkins and Jukembayev, and then he goes back and tries to avenge that loss, and he does so by stoppage. He ends up stopping Ananian, avenges his loss, stopping him in the 9th round. Then he moves on to Jeremiah Ponce. That was an awesome fight as well. He stops Ponce in the 5th round, and now Ergashev. They start going back and forth from the opening bell. Ergashev getting the better of Matias early on. Matias ends up finding his rhythm around the 2nd round, and then that's all she wrote. They had a very good exchanges for the first 3 rounds. Matias's power is no joke, and it ended up overcoming Ergashev, and Ergashev does not answer the bell. Stays in his stool, retires in his stool, does not answer the bell. So this was a TKO, and he remains as the IBF champion for the 140 pounds. So now you got Rolly with the WBA title. You have Matias with the IBF. You have Regis with the WBC, and he's putting that title on the line against Devin Haney in a few weeks' time. Devin Haney, of course, vacated his WBC title in the 135 pounds, and still undecided whether he's going to go back and defend the other titles. He has somewhat of like a franchise type status, kind of like what they designated with Canelo and Lomachenko years ago, which caused a lot of confusion with Teofimo when he became undisputed, beating Lomachenko, because he took that franchise title from him, but not really the WBC title. Enter Devin Haney, who they called him the paper champ, the email champ, and blah blah blah. That whole mess that happened, and the WBC created that mess. That was not Teofimo's fault. It was not Devin Haney's fault. That was the WBC creating that mess. So Devin Haney's still undecided, but should he become a champion? Now he's going to be a champion at 140 pounds. Should he be successful against Regis? So now you got Regis WBC. You have Subriel Matias with the IBF, Rolly Romero with the WBA, and you have Teofimo Lopez, who beat Josh Taylor earlier this year, took the ring title, lifted the ring title from him in a superb performance against Josh Taylor, a fight that everybody was seeing the fight go in Josh Taylor's favor. Remember, Josh Taylor was the undisputed champ, the fifth to accomplish the undisputed status in the four-belt era when he defeated Jose Ramirez, and he's the man. He is the man, or was the man at 140 pounds, vacated some titles because of sanctioning fees and his disagreement with those organizations, ended up keeping the WBO and the ring title, and Teofimo put on an amazing performance and shut him out, basically. Just schooled him, which nobody saw coming. A lot of people had Josh Taylor favoring him. And remember, Josh Taylor was trying to get himself into a fight up at welterweight, a division north, against none other than Terrence Crawford, being the undisputed champ. That's a fight that he was always chasing. This was supposed to be easy work. And he talked a big game and then got surprised once he stepped into the ring with Teofimo. Teofimo was being playful. That's an amazing fight that took place, and an amazing performance by Teofimo Lopez. That's your WBO champ and the ring champ. He's the man at 140 pounds now. He was the man, and as nicknamed by Josh Taylor, when Teofimo had all those titles around his waist at 135 pounds before he lost him to Cambozos, everybody considered Teofimo a joke, that he was basically claiming to be something that he wasn't, and nicknamed by Josh Taylor as the disputed undisputed champion. He was the disputed undisputed champion. All because of that one WBC title that he couldn't connect the full circle as far as titles were. He didn't have all the rings. He did have the version of it, but that franchise title, or the franchise status, of course, is non-transferable. If you go look and read up on the WBC's policies, that was a mess that they created, but Teofimo earned it. He beat Lomachenko. He got the nod over Lomachenko. A lot of people questioned that, just like a lot of people put into question the fight that happened earlier this year between Lomachenko and Haney. That's a fight that we could get into as well in the future. That was a fight that I saw Haney winning. I've been a big proponent of Haney, not a D-rider, not a bandwagoner. You guys have heard me. Go back and check out my catalog. I've been very, very consistent with Devin Haney, including his fight with Linares when he got shaken up. Those were the questions that needed to be answered. His fight against Jojo Diaz. Those are the questions that needed to be answered. How was his chin going to hold up? How was he going to be able to bounce back? And he continues to improve and look better and better and better. And here he goes, shooting for the stars, one division north, trying to do work at 140 pounds against a very tough opponent in Regis Prograis. So now you got Subriel Matias, bringing this back to Subriel Matias. He's the powerhouse. He's, in my opinion, a mini Tito Trinidad. Or like this age, this generation's Tito Trinidad, because Tito did go through those divisions as well. He's like a mini Tito, in my opinion, where he's got that knockout power, he's got concussive power, he's got good speed, good handwork, decent boxing, not the most refined, but he's got good boxing. He's got good understanding and very, very good communication with his corner, where if you look at his fights, when the corner is instructing him, he goes and applies it. And he changes up his style and adapts very well. He picks his shots very well, and when he lands, there's power. He may not land super clean, but that's how much power he has, that it transitions well for him and turns the tide in his favor whenever he's in there. And the body of work is there. The last 5 fights, all by stoppage. He's your IBF champ. Subriel Matias is going to give headaches to anybody and everybody at 140 pounds. Of course, Regis Prograis a little bit faster than him, a little bit more elusive than Matias. Matias's power could change the fight in his favor. Who else is there? Teofimo. Teofimo is a completely different monster. Incredible speed, incredible agility, punches in different angles, odd angles, which catches opponents off guard, keeps them on guard, off guard, because they don't know where the punches are coming from. Teofimo is just a completely different beast. Subriel Matias' power could definitely turn the tide in his favor. We saw Cambozos go toe-to-toe with Teofimo. Teofimo still very gullible and very ego-driven, when very prideful when it comes to a stand-up, stand-and-bang type of fight, where he gets baited into that, and he got baited in by Cambozos and wanted to go toe-to-toe and ended up losing the nods and his titles. And that's what we thought was going to happen with Josh Taylor, and it did. It did start happening at first. It started taking place early in the fight, but then he ended up finding a stride, relaxed, started bringing Taylor to fight his fight and controlled it. And from there, he was just having a blast in the ring, and it was fun. It was a fun fight to watch. Impressive performance to watch. Subriel Matias, if he baits Teo into a stand and bang fight and they begin trading, he's probably going to hurt Teofimo. And that's not unlikely for Teofimo to do, to engage that way. Who else is there? Rolly? I mean, we saw what happened with Rolly against Gervonta. Enough said. We saw what happened with Rolly against Barroso, but he gets the nod. Enough said. I think Matias with Rolly, that would be an easy unification fight. Congratulations to Rolly for having the title, but I think he's the weakest of the champions at 140 pounds, and he's got the mouth to talk himself into a big payday, which is incredible. He's kind of like a well, not even. I was about to say he's like a Ricardo Mayorga of today's age in boxing, but he's not, because Ricardo Mayorga actually had power and beat some really, really good opponents to get those titles around his waist. So he would back it up. This fight with Ismael Barroso, you guys let me know what you think. Go ahead and comment. Send me in some comments and let me know what you think as to who the weaker fighter at 140 pounds is. But as of right now, I'm going to stick with Teofimo being the top dog at 140 pounds. I'm going to put Subriel Matias, just based on youth, in number 2. Regis Prograis, a very slight number 3, maybe even tied for number 2 with Subriel Matias, just because of his body of work and his experience, his resume. But I think Subriel Matias' power is that good and that game-changing that I would slightly favor him over Regis. And then we got Rolly Romero, which is definitely a solid 3, maybe number 4, if we decide between Prograis and Matias. But that's how I see the 140 pounds. Very, very, very good division. It's starting to pan out really well. It was kind of dull for a few years. Even when we saw Gervonta move up to fight Mario Barrios, it was kind of like a dull era of boxing there right after Taylor and Ramirez happened. That was the absolute best fight. Jose Cepeda, of course, against Baranchik. That whole era, that whole class of fighters right there, seems like it's starting. Some of them are moving up, some of them have taken losses, and now you got the division south at 135, a lot of those fighters moving up, entering. Ryan Garcia and bigger names now, Devin Haney's coming to it, and so forth. So, and especially with Teo arriving there, we got some big movement at 140, and it's starting to become one of the most exciting, or more exciting, divisions aside from the 135 and the 147. Awesome work by Subriel Matias. And with that, let's jump over to another fight that took place on this during this event, on this undercard, and that was Lamont Roach Jr. There was a bunch of fights, by the way. I mean, Kermel Moton, who's Floyd Mayweather's protege, the young kid, Kermel Moton, you see him all over YouTube and these YouTube shorts and Instagram, and he looks like he's going to be an amazing fighter should he stay on this trajectory, and he's going to be the face of boxing the way that he's looking right now. He is very impressive, started at a very young age, similar to like a Shakur, like a Devin, like Gervonta, under the tutelage, especially Gervonta under Mayweather's tutelage. And Kermel Moton looks like he's going to take over boxing in a few years' time. He's going to be a household name should he remain on this trajectory. So he was not on the televised portion, but he ended up winning by knockout. Then we had some other big fights that caught my attention was Vito Melnicki. He was out there. Of course, he's a middleweight. I think he's the one that world super welter. So he's fighting at 154 pounds. Vito Melnicki Jr. He beat Alexis Flores. Sergey Lipinets against Michel Rivera. Michel Rivera with another victory. Remember, Michel Rivera he's the kid that they end up associating with Muhammad Ali with the flat top and the shorts, and he looks the part like a Muhammad Ali, like a young Muhammad Ali, aka Cassius Clay, right? He looks that part. He's going for that look, and he's been promoting and selling himself for that look, like he's a young Ali. And he ended up running into Frank Martin with and walking away with his first defeat at the hands of Frank Martin. Nobody even paid attention that he was going to be fighting. That's his sole loss in his career. And Michel Rivera ends up coming away with the victory over Sergey Lipinets. Sergey, of course, has been around for quite a while. Then we got into the Matias fight. But now let's jump over to Lamont Roach, because we got another fighter that shook up a division, his respective division being 130 pounds. Who's our champions when we think of 130 pounds? We think of Emmanuel Navarrete. He had an amazing back and forth war, a fight that I actually got a chance to attend out in Phoenix earlier this summer, and that was against Oscar Valdez. That was such a big fight, and if you guys recall that fight, you had Marco Antonio Barrera and Eric Morales at the weigh-ins and at the fight conferences and the press conferences and so forth, almost billing it as if it was going to be the second coming to their rivalry, Oscar Valdez and Navarrete. The fight delivered. The fight was a back and forth brawl, but Navarrete ended up getting the nod, ended up hurting Oscar Valdez and damaging him pretty bad, and he's your WBO champ at 130 and possibly the number one in that division of all the champions. We got Joe Cordina, the Welsh fighter, Joe Cordina. Then we have Oshaki Foster. And Oshaki Foster is somebody who I was following when that NBC show started. What was the name of that show? I can't remember. It was an NBC boxing show, and they were going out to like Puerto Rico and going out to these... And they were having like Amanda Serrano be the commentator, and Senias Estrada would fly over to go commentate. And they had fights throughout the U.S. They ended up, they were doing this maybe 2021, 2022. That's the first time I saw Oshaki Foster. And I've been a big fan of his ever since. And apparently he's got a past with Gervonta and Shakur and all of them, having trained with them and having done Olympic trials and so forth. But he's like the unspoken one. He's the one that nobody really knows about and nobody really talks about. They don't mention his name, and he's coming. He's coming. He was at 126, now at 130, and now he's a champ. He's a WBC champ at 130 pounds. You got Emmanuel Navarrete as a WBO champ, possibly the number one at 130, and you have Oshaki Foster would be on my number two. You have Joe Cordina, and now you have your newest champion as of this past Saturday, Lamont Roach Jr., with an amazing performance and dropping Hector Garcia down the stretch to close out the fight in emphatic fashion. And when you think of Lamont Roach, you always associate him with Golden Boy, let alone, to most people's surprise, he was not a Golden Boy fighter on Saturday. He hasn't been a Golden Boy fighter for the majority of the year, and he ended up becoming a free agent earlier in the summer. He became a free agent around late May and did not re-sign with Golden Boy, and he's been on his own. When I saw the fight, my immediate feeling was, dang, Oscar and Bernard have a new champ in their stable. And then I hear the comment and I immediately started looking and I'm like, wait a minute, he's not with Golden Boy anymore. And the more research, as I started doing quick research during the end of the fight, I come to find out that he's been a free agent since May. Just about May, early May, I think, early or mid-May. And so he's been on his own and it paid off. He did not re-sign with Golden Boy and it paid off. Lamont Roach has a solid body of work if you look at his resume, and and you look at the opposition that he's had, the way he's come up, his matchmaking. Golden Boy did a really good job with them, and now that he's taken the torch on his own and just running off with it, he's doing great. Look at him. He's a champion. He's a world champion now. Sucks that he's not with Golden Boy. It sucks for Golden Boy that they don't have him in their stable, because look at this. Great matchmaking, and he ended up pairing up well against Hector Luis Garcia. Very, very well. It was, to me, one of the best fights of the night, if not fight of the night. It was a crazy back and forth. Hector Luis Garcia, we know him from his loss earlier in the year, opening the year against Gervonta Davis. He was, of course, the champ at 130, the Dominican sensation, moving up to 135 to fight Gervonta. Smaller fighter facing Gervonta, of course, right? I'm a big fan of Tank, but holy crap, man. Like, he's been taking these mismatches, going up to 140, going up to 135, and then fighting Leo Santa Cruz at 130. It's always these crazy Mayweather-style mismatches. Leonard Ellerbe, of course, behind that, and it's happening. And he's obviously claiming that he's the face of boxing, challenging Canelo for that title because he's selling out arenas. Tank is that popular and has that big of a following that he's selling out arenas. And the fact that he doesn't fight the big names but continues to look so impressive and puts on fun fights. Fun, back and forth fights. You can't go against him. That's what's attracting people to his fights and putting butts in seats and selling out arenas, or at least getting very high attendance numbers. Maybe not the highest pay-per-view sales, but very high attendance numbers. And if we look back at what he did with Mario Barrios, the times that he chooses for his fights are usually beginning of the years or closing out years, where boxing is either barely getting its gears under its wing or getting the wind under its sails, or closing out, and the boxing schedule seems to be a little lighter, and Gervonta seems to be the biggest name or draw around that time, and people go out to see one last big show or kick off the year with one big show, and that being Gervonta on the billing. His fight with Mario Barrios was insane, right? It was packed. And then they usually have a decent undercard, at least even at the minimum, one good fight on the undercard as supporting. His fight with Leo Santa Cruz was another huge crowd. His fight with Pitbull Cruz in LA, huge fight. Ended up being a back and forth where a lot of people thought that Pitbull should have walked away with the decision and with the victory that night. And ever since then, the talks of the rematch have been taking place. Whether it's happening, it's on and off again, so forth. Gervonta, of course, famously at the end of the fight saying he was not gonna give Pitbull the rematch, but now it seems like it's headed that way, and so. That's Gervonta going up and down and the mismatches and this, and Hector Luis Garcia ended up being one of those victims earlier in this year, and nonetheless, he comes back to his division at 130, and he has a title to defend. He has work to do, and he had his work cut out for him against Lamont Roach. And he did not get the nod. He lost a split decision, lost his title, second fight in a row. 2023 was a losing year for Hector Luis Garcia. Walks away with 2 fights, 2 losses. So he's got to revamp, re-strategize, and attack 2024, either staying at the 130 or moving up to 135. He's a solid fighter at 130. He thought he got the decision, but that drop seemed to have made the decision at the to have given the decision and swayed the judges in the favor of Lamont Roach. And the drop, the fact that he went down in round 12, closing out the fight, the exchanges that these two had. Lamont Roach is a beast. He is a beast and your newest champion at 130 pounds. If you look at Lamont Roach's body of work, he's 24-1-1 with 9 knockouts. He's quick. He's elusive. He's accurate. He's got his one draw came against Orlando Cruz back in 2018. And And then his loss came against Jamel Herring. And of course, the WBO title was on hand. It was on the line. Jamel Herring being the the most recent, longest reigning champion at 130 pounds until he ran into Shakur. And then, of course, Shakur doesn't defend that title, moves up to 135 immediately after. Now, Jamel Herring, having been the most recent, longest reigning champ, his career ended up taking a different route after his loss to Shakur. But that fight was so meaningful because Lamont Roach was stepping up. And he came up short. That was a unanimous decision loss that he had against Jamel Herring. So he was already knocking on the door of greatness. And here he is just a few fights later. He stayed the course and now he's champion. And he's champion for a different division. He's the WBA champ now. But you look at Lamont Roach's body of work and you can't say anything but admire what he's done. Look at his body of work and the resume, the records of the fighters. Yes, he has, like most fighters, first 10, 15 fights are always against questionable fighters, but they're building them up. And every so often he would have a really good opponent, starting with Mario Macias. From there, Alejandro Valdez was another tough fight that he had. Overcame it with that was a big or a somewhat of a notable fight on paper, thinking that Alejandro Valdez was going to be a tougher opponent for him and a test where he was starting to face the Mexican fighters and the Mexican slugfest style. And he knocked out Valdez in the first round, 26-8. Jesus Valdez Barrayan was a 20-2 fighter when they faced off. That was in 2017, leading to his big names from there. Ray Perez, Orlando Cruz, the draw with Orlando Cruz. Davey Julio, that was another tough fight. And he ends up stopping Julio in round 6. From there, he ends up beating Jonathan Oquendo by unanimous decision. That was in 2019, and that was the lead up. That was his preparation for a Jamel Herring fight. He comes short with Jamel Herring in his first title fight, and from there he goes on a winning streak. 4-fight win streak leading to this fight with Hector Garcia. In that work, he beats Danny Rosas, a 22-4 fighter, and Rene Alvarado. One half of the twins, Rene Alvarado, who is just a tough, you pick 'em type fighter. He's gone from 126 to 130. His brother, of course, campaigns at a lower division. Insane, the body of work that those guys put. Nicaraguan fighters, as tough as they come. And Lamont Roach passed that test. From there, he ends up fighting Angel Rodriguez, that was another really, really tough fight for Lamont Roach. Angel Rodriguez was 21-1 Venezuelan fighter. Tough fight for Lamont Roach. And then enter this fight. That was July of last year. Lamont Roach sitting out for quite a while. And of course, a lot of that had to do with the contractual agreements and so forth between him and Golden Boy. Big pause that he had from July of 22 until this fight that he has against Hector Luis Garcia. Crazy body of work that he's done. He's been coming up the right way. He's been taking on the necessary challenges and has been improving each and every fight. And here he is. It paid off. He dethrones Hector Luis Garcia, lifts the title from him, and he's one of the top 4 dogs at 130 pounds. How does he fare against Emmanuel Navarrete, in your opinion? I would be interested to hear from you guys. Shoot me some comments. I'd be interested to hear from you guys, or reach out to me on Twitter, maybe on the Instagram page. Shoot me some comments. I want to hear from you. How does Lamont Roach fare against Vaquero Navarrete? Very short. Obviously the height's going to be a big issue already going into it. But what about hand speed? Does he have the chin, the necessary chin? His chin paid off, and it held up well against Garcia. How will it hold up against Navarrete? Does he have a chance? What about O'Shaquie Foster? More of an elusive back and forth type fight. you pick 'em type fight, him and Oshaki Foster would be a speed, hand accuracy, footwork type of fight. That one I like Lamont Roach a lot more in against Oshaki Foster. I'd probably still favor Foster over Lamont Roach, but it'd be a really, really tight fight. If anything, if it's not a 50-50 fight with Roach and Foster, I would say 60-40 for Foster, but not that far apart. With Navarrete, I see it a lot tougher, just because of the height, the reach, the punching power of Navarrete. I mean, we saw what he did to Oscar Valdez, and Oscar Valdez is just all heart, all spirit, just took it to him and hit Navarrete with some crazy punches where I was sitting. You would hear these overhands land on Navarrete, and it was just smack. The hit sound was just, you would just hear it across the arena. Because it's not that big of an arena, Desert Diamond Arena, where the fight was held. It's not that big, and those punches were echoing when Valdez was hitting them, and we were like oohing and eyeing on the crowd, and he just couldn't drop. He couldn't shake. I mean, he stumbled Navarrete several times, Valdez did, but he just couldn't get the upper hand on him, and Navarrete just kept coming. And you've heard me in my past catalog how I'll speak about the zombie style, right? The Nate Diaz zombie style that I credit to him, where he just keeps coming and keeps coming and keeps coming. That was crazy, man. He just couldn't stop Navarrete, and that's why I see that he's just going to be nearly unstoppable at 130 pounds. At least I don't see anybody that could give him a challenge. Shakur and Navarrete would be an awesome fight because Shakur likes to engage and stand in your face and stand and bang. At least he has in the past against these boogeymen or these tough fights. He ends up destroying them. But then you have his past fight against Nakatila, and we see what happened there. So he doesn't like to engage, or he shies away from those big punchers. Now, what about Joe Cordina, Lamont Roach? That would be a you pick 'em type fight because Joe Cordina's more of a powerhouse, come forward, very quick hands, very good power, especially when he delivers his body shots. Lamont Roach, very elusive with better footwork than Cordina, delivers faster than Cordina. That would be a kind of what we just saw against Hector Luis Garcia. Joe Cordina and Garcia would be a 50-50 fight for me. Lamont Roach, having done what he did and dropping Garcia down the stretch, withstanding that much damage and that many punches that he took from Garcia, the onslaught that Garcia was unleashing on him in the middle of the fight. Lamont, it was a crazy back and forth fight. If it doesn't get considered for fight of the year, I'd be surprised because it was that good of a fight. Lamont Roach against Joe Cordina, I think, would be probably the easier route for me. If he's going to be seeking to unify, I would try to go after that fight. Even though Foster and Cordina have been exchanging words and comments through social media, if that fight doesn't get made between Foster and Cordina, I would get Lamont Roach making phone calls, and Cordina would probably see Lamont Roach as a weaker of the champions, just like Lamont Roach would probably see the same. And I stand on the side of Roach, and I think Lamont would be successful against Joe Cordina and dethrone Joe Cordina, lift that title, and become a unified champ at 130. Picking the right, that would be the right path for me if I was looking out for Lamont Roach. Subriel Matias, Lamont Roach, what a hell of a card that Benavidez and Andrade put together. And there's one more fight that we got to cover. And so I'll do an episode on that. But what a hell of a card that Benavidez and Andrade put as we dwindle down 2023. Hell of a card and top name fighters. Man, I mean, Michel Rivera back on the winning end. Lamont Roach, your new champ at 130. Subriel Matias retains his title at 140. Two awesome divisions right now. Michel Rivera, 135-pound contender. Maybe he'll avenge that fight with Frank Martin, since Frank Martin pulled out of the Shakur Stevenson fight earlier in the year. Maybe we could have Michel Rivera, Frank Martin too, even though Frank Martin kind of schooled Rivera and beat him to the punch and just outworked him. Rivera didn't have anything for him, but the rematch would always be a lot different. Or it should be a lot different if you study and you come up with a different game plan than what you utilize to approach the first go around. Awesome, man. I love sitting here and talking boxing with you guys, and I want to thank you guys for bringing me into your homes and for spending a little time with me. And let's keep going. Let's close out 2023 with a bang. Let's keep going. One more fight to cover on this card in what was such a big weekend, and then we move on and head out to Ireland to cover that Katie Taylor, or talk, recap the fight that took place in Ireland between Katie Taylor and Chantel Cameron, the rematch. Awesome. Take care of yourselves. Have yourselves a great night. Stay safe. See you on the next episode.